What if the 10 greatest Western epics had their own Wuxia versions? In this video, we explore 10 Western epics that share similarities with 10 novels by Jin Yong, the legendary author from Hong Kong. Identical structures, similar themes, comparable moral dilemmas. It's as if there's a single universal blueprint connecting these two different worlds. From Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, The Witcher, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Hateful Eight, Braveheart, Andor, The Last Kingdom, to the Count of Monte Cristo. The 10 greatest stories from the West, and the 10 epic tales from the East. The connection between them? This is what will change the way you see both of these worlds. And this is the bridge.
Who is Jin Yong? Jin Yong is the pen name of Louis Cha, 1924 to 2018, a novelist, journalist, and iconic cultural figure from Hong Kong, known as the world's most influential writer of Mandarin language Wuxia literature. His works have sold over 300 million copies globally and have been adapted countless times into films, television dramas, comics, and video games.
To name a few, The Return of the Condor Heroes, 1983, starring Andy Lau and Heidi Chan. The Smiling Proud Wanderer, 1984, starring Chow Yun-fat. The Swordsman, 1992, starring Jet Li and Bridget Lin. Sakura, 2023, starring Donnie Yen. And many more. His universe features political complexity rivaling Game of Thrones and epic scale on par with The Lord of the Rings.
1,000-year timeline, from the Song to the Qing dynasties. In the West, we grew up with Middle-earth and Westeros. In the East, they grew up with Jianghu, a world of martial arts, secret clans, and destinies written in blood. Two epic traditions, separated by language, culture, and continents. And before we delve into these 10 epic analogies across two continents, we need to first understand the scale of Jin Yong's universe. His 10 novels do not stand alone. They span almost 2,000 years of Chinese history, from the end of the Northern Song Dynasty to the Qing Dynasty. The legend of the Condor heroes begins in the 12th century as Genghis Khan unites the Mongol tribes and invades China. Return of the Condor heroes continues this story a generation later as Khan threatens the fortress of Xiangyang. Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber jumps approximately 100 years later to the end of the Yuan dynasty, when the Ming cult, a secret martial arts faction, leads a rebellion that would establish the Ming dynasty. These three novels form the Condor trilogy, the backbone of Jin Yong's universe. But beyond this trilogy, there are novels set in the Qing dynasty, The Deer and the Cauldron, a spy story at the heart of the imperial court. Sword stained with royal blood, about an exiled prince amidst civil war. And among them all stands Demi-Gods and Semi-Devils, Jin Yong's most complex and ambitious novel, set in the Northern Song Dynasty, a century before Genghis Khan was born. This is a universe no less vast than Tolkien's Legendarium, no less brutal than Westeros, no less politically complex than Star Wars. And now, we will map it to the epics you already know. 10 Wuxia epics and their Western counterparts. Here is the complete list of 10 Jin Yong Wuxia epics and the Western epics that are structurally identical to them. 1. Demi-Gods and Semi-Devils versus Game of Thrones. Structural similarities. 3 protagonists with parallel storylines that never truly converge. Inter-kingdom political intrigue. Fate as a central theme. Karma replaces Valar Morghulis. 2. The Legend of the Condor Heroes versus The Lord of the Rings. Structural similarities. An epic quest that starts small. A humble hero from the grasslands who carries the fate of the world. A wise mentor who falls along the way. Great battles determining the fate of civilization. 3. Return of the Condor Heroes versus The Witcher. Structural similarities. An exiled protagonist with a dark past, raised by figures shunned by society. Forbidden love as the core of the story. A complicated mentor-disciple relationship. 4. Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber versus Star Wars. Structural similarities. An orphan boy wounded by a tyrannical ruler, joining a secret cult, and leading a rebellion to overthrow a dynasty. Duality of light and dark. Legendary swords as symbols of power. 5. The Deer and the Cauldron versus Pirates of the Caribbean. Structural similarities. A charismatic anti-hero who survives by wit and luck, not strength. Shifting loyalties. Comedy amidst deadly political schemes.
6. Fox Volant of the Snowy Mountain versus the Hateful Eight. Structural similarities. A confined narrative. One location, one day, many agendas. Revenge as the driving force of the story. Every character hides their true identity and motives. 7. The Book and the Sword versus Braveheart. Structural similarities. A rebellion leader against an oppressive empire. Internal conflict within the resistance movement. Love, betrayal, and a leader's sacrifice for his people.
8. Sword Stained with Royal Blood versus Dune.
Structural similarities. A prince who loses everything in childhood, raised by an enemy faction, and must choose an identity between two warring worlds. 9. The Smiling Proud Wanderer versus Andor. Structural similarities. An ordinary individual caught in a larger interfaction struggle. Rebellion against a corrupt system. The question, can an individual fight the machinery of power?
10. A Deadly Secret versus the Count of Monte Cristo.
Structural similarities. Betrayal by those closest. A treasure hunt that changes human nature. Revenge as the sole purpose of life. The question, can justice be bought with gold? 10 Jin Yong novels. 10 Western epics. 10 mirrors. And now, let's open them one by one.
Demi-Gods and Semi-Devils versus Game of Thrones. 3 protagonists, 3 parallel storylines. None ever truly converge, yet all are bound by the same thread of karma. Xiao Feng, the leader of the Beggars Clan, who turns out not to be Chinese. The discovery of his identity shatters everything. Like Jon Snow, he's an outsider, destined to lead. And like Jon Snow, his honor is his greatest curse.
Duan Yu, a prince who despises violence, yet masters the deadliest martial arts techniques. Like Tyrion Lannister, he uses his intellect against a world that underestimates him. Xu Ju, a humble monk who desires no power, yet gains it all. In the background, 4 kingdoms at war, 8 heavenly races with their own agendas, intrigue, betrayal, and bloodshed on a scale that makes Westeros feel like a small family quarrel. But there is one fundamental difference. In Game of Thrones, destiny is fought with swords. In Demi-Gods and Semi-Devils, destiny is karma, and no one can escape it.
Legend of the Condor Heroes versus Lord of the Rings. Guo Jing was not supposed to be a hero. Born in exile, raised on the Mongolian grasslands, slow-witted, untalented. But like Frodo Baggins, it is his very simplicity that saves the world. The Legend of the Condor Heroes is the Chinese version of the Fellowship of the Ring, an epic journey across a vast land. 7 strange masters replace the 9 members of the Fellowship. Genghis Khan is Sauron, not a monster, but an unstoppable, destructive force. Like Gandalf falling in Moria, Guo Jing's mentors fall one by one. Like Aragorn having to accept his destiny as king, Guo Jing must accept that he will become the symbol of the Southern Song Dynasty's last stand. The main difference? Victory in Condor Heroes does not come from destroying a ring. It comes from a simple man standing at the city gates and refusing to retreat against enemy expansion. Return of the Condor Heroes versus The Witcher. Yang Guo is the Zhonghu version of Geralt of Rivia, hated from birth due to his father's sins, raised by masters shunned by society, just as Geralt was raised by the Witchers in Kaer Morhen. He falls in love with his own master, Xiaolong Nu,
Little Dragon Maiden. And this relationship is considered forbidden by the entire martial arts world. Like Yennefer, Xiaolong Nu is strong, cold on the surface, and bound by a destiny she did not choose.
And like Geralt hunting monsters while humans are often more monstrous, Yang Guo traverses Jianghu, fighting humans enslaved by obsession, revenge, and power. Both are loners, both are exiles. Both find meaning not in glory, but in protecting the one person they love. The biggest difference? Geralt hunts monsters for coin. Yang Guo fights to prove that love cannot be judged by anyone's rules.
Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber versus Star Wars. Zhang Wuji is Luke Skywalker, an orphan, his parents killed by a corrupt empire. He is rescued and trained by a secret faction, the Ming Cult, like the Rebel Alliance, operating in the shadows. The Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber are two lightsabers. One symbolizes authority, one symbolizes justice. Whoever controls both controls the martial arts world.
Like Luke grappling between the light side and dark side, Zhang Wuji constantly wavers between revenge and forgiveness, between loyalty to the cult and his love for an enemy's daughter. There is a cruel enemy emperor, a Mongol version of Palpatine, who rules with an iron fist. And like Return of the Jedi, the climax is a massive rebellion that overthrows the dynasty. But unlike Star Wars, Zhang Wuji does not receive a ceremonial medal at the end. He receives betrayal and the bitterest lesson about power. The Deer and the Cauldron versus Pirates of the Caribbean. Wei Xiaobao is Jack Sparrow, stranded in Emperor Kangxi's court. He cannot fight, cannot read, has no honor, at least by Jiang Hu standards. But like Jack Sparrow, he survives by wit, a silver tongue, and almost supernatural luck. The Deer and the Cauldron is Jin Yong's most subversive novel. There are no grand heroes here, only a small trickster who accidentally becomes a spy, a general, a cult leader, and the Emperor's confidant, all in one lifetime. Like Jack, constantly shifting loyalties between Barbossa, the East India Company, and whoever offers the best advantage, Wei Xiaobao plays all sides. The Emperor, the Heaven and Earth Society, even the Qing's enemies. But behind all the comedy and chaos, there's a serious question. Can a small trickster have a big heart? And like pirates, the answer, surprisingly, is yes. Fox Volant of the Snowy Mountain versus the Hateful Eight. A remote inn on a snowy mountain peak. 8 swordsmen. One day, one secret. Like Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, Fox Volant of the Snowy Mountain is a chamber piece, a psychological thriller built on isolation and distrust. Every character hides an agenda. Every dialogue is a veiled duel. And the longer the blizzard traps them together, the clearer it becomes that not all of them will make it out alive.
His protagonist, Hu Fei, is like Major Marquis Warren, a man with a mission of revenge he has awaited for years. But unlike the bloody and explosive The Hateful Eight, Fox Volant's climax is more subtle, and in many ways, more devastating. Because at the end of the story, Hu Fei must choose between the revenge that has defined his life and something he never expected. The Book and the Sword versus Braveheart. Chen Zhaoluo is the Qing dynasty's William Wallace, leader of the Red Flower Society, a Han resistance movement against the oppressive Qing Empire. Like Wallace, he leads an outnumbered and outgunned rebel force. Like Wallace, he faces traitors within his own ranks. And like Wallace, he must confront the devastating question: is his sacrifice for his people or for his own ego? The Book and the Sword is Jin Yong's first novel, and in it, all the major themes that would define his universe are already visible. The conflict between tribal loyalty and universal justice, between love and duty, between liberation and power. The main difference? Wallace ends up on the executioner's block. Chen Zhaoluo must live with the consequences of every decision he makes.
Sword Stained with Royal Blood versus Dune. Yuan Chengji is the 17th century Chinese equivalent of Paul Atreides. His father was a general executed by the emperor. Just as Duke Leto was betrayed by the Padishah emperor, Paul Atreides fled to the desert and was trained by the Fremen. Yuan Chengji fled to the Hua Mountains and was trained by a Grand Master of the legendary Huashan sect. Two orphans, two secret paths to power. Both are caught between three mutually destructive political forces. Paul must choose between House Atreides, the Harkonnens, and the Empire. Yuan Chengzhi must choose between the Ming loyalists who killed his father, Li Zicheng's rebel forces promising justice, and the Manchus threatening from the north. No side is innocent, no side is right. And both of them loved women from the side that was supposed to be their enemy. Chani was a Fremen, a stranger in the eyes of the Empire. Aju was Princess Changping, the daughter of the dynasty that had killed Yuan Chengzhi's father. A love that should never have existed, yet became the core of every decision they made.
And in the end, both chose the same path, to leave. Paul Atreides, Emperor of the Galaxy, walked blindly into the desert, abandoning the empire built in his name. Yuan Chengzhi set sail away from China, for the justice he sought could not be found among the three equally corrupt factions. Two princes, two blood-stained swords. Two men who realized that victory doesn't always mean winning. Sometimes the only victory is refusing to play the game.
The Smiling Proud Wanderer versus Andor. Ling Huchong is Cassian Andor. He was not born a rebel. He was a loyal disciple of an orthodox sect, just as Cassian drifted through everyday life before rebellion found him. But when the system he trusted betrays him, he must choose, remain obedient and lose his soul, or fight and lose everything.
The Smiling Proud Wanderer is Jin Yong's most political novel. It's about how absolute power corrupts, about how institutions turn into oppressive machines, and about how an ordinary individual, without extraordinary power, without a grand destiny, can still fight for freedom. Like Andor, showing that rebellion is built by ordinary people making difficult choices, Ling Huchong proves that true freedom, smiling and proud, does not come from the strongest martial arts techniques. It comes from refusing to submit to a corrupt system.
A Deadly Secret versus the Count of Monte Cristo. Di Chung is Edmond Dantes, betrayed by those he trusted, thrown into darkness. His dream of justice turns into an obsession with revenge. A Deadly Secret is Jin Yong's darkest novel. It's not about heroes. It's about how greed destroys everyone it touches.
Like the treasure of Monte Cristo, transforming Dantes from a poor sailor into a mysterious and calculating count, the secret of a legendary martial arts manual, which supposedly leads to unlimited treasure, transforms every character into the worst version of themselves. Teachers betray students, brothers kill brothers, love turns into a weapon. And like Dantes finally realizing that revenge cannot bring back what was lost, the climax of this novel asks the same question. When you gain everything, are you still the same person?
The Bridge. 10 Wuxia epics, 10 Western epics, 10 bridges. What we found is no coincidence. It's proof that epic stories, in every culture, in every language, are built from the same material. Reluctant heroes, fallen mentors, forbidden love, devastating betrayal, rebellion against tyranny.
Jin Yong did not imitate the West. The West did not imitate Jin Yong. They both discovered a universal blueprint for stories that stir the human soul, and wrote them in their respective languages. Jin Yong passed away in 2018 at the age of 94. He never saw the Western world truly read his novels, but he always believed that his stories of honor, love, sacrifice, and justice, transcended language and cultural boundaries.
Today, 300 million copies later, we know he was right. This is the Jin Yong universe, wuxia epics equivalent to the greatest epics ever written by humanity. And the bridge is now open.
10 analogies, 10 bridges, but this is just the beginning. Each of these 10 similarities will be discussed in more depth in separate videos. Each Jin Yong novel will be dissected, its characters, plot, philosophy, and why its Western epic counterpart is truly structurally identical. From Demi-Gods and Semi-Devils versus Game of Thrones to A Deadly Secret versus the Count of Monte Cristo, each video will take you deeper into a universe that has captivated over 1 billion readers. So make sure you've turned on notification bells and subscribe to this channel. Which version of these 10 epics do you think has the most similarities? Write your answer in the comments section below. And before you go, share this video so more people can discover Jin Yong's universe. See you in the next video.